This video will teach you how to use magic in Along the Leyline, an all-new tabletop role-playing game. If you haven't already watched our other video that shows you the basics of how to play Along the Leyline, I recommend watching that first and then coming back and watching this video. With no further ado, let's get into it. How to use magic in Along the Leyline. There are 4 different kinds of magic in Along the Leyline. Well, actually, there are 5. There are elemental, support, holy, dark, and resonance. Whenever you use an elemental spell, it's like fire or water or wind. It deals something with the elements of nature. Whenever you're using a support spell, it has to do with magic itself, or things that would be useful and helpful, usually not dealing damage, like moving objects, unlocking a door, turning invisible. Holy spells deal with healing and protecting, and dark arcana can do, well, basically anything. And when you use dark arcana, it's really risky stuff, because even though you have limitless power, power comes with a cost. Now that we know about the different types of magic, let's talk about the different kinds of magic. Well, okay, I don't really know how to separate these two in my mind. Just go with me on this. So we have all the different types, which we just talked about, and then we have how magic is used by the characters. So there are complete spells, which are epic spells from mages of old, and then you can build your own spells in the game by taking forms and elements and combining them together to make a new spell. Then you have sorcery as well. This is people who just have an inherent understanding of magic, and they can do anything they can imagine in a confined space. Then you have using magic items, which, remember from earlier, is its own special skill, resonance. Can you actually just pick up any kind of magic item, understand how it works, and use it? Now that you know about the different kinds of magic, let's talk about each one specifically and how to use it in the game. Let's talk about complete spells. Complete spells are epic and powerful versions of spells. They're rather rigid, but they're very powerful. There are different kinds of complete spells for each type of magic. There are elemental complete spells like Firestorm. There are support complete spells like Unseen Bridge, Unseen Wall. There are holy complete spells like Banish, and there are dark complete spells like Summon Demons. Each one has its own special unique power, and you can find them in the Player's Tome, or if you want an even larger list, you can find it in the Player's Expansion. Let's talk about spell pieces. So normally when you cast a spell, you're going to take an element and a form and mash them together to make a spell. Elements are what's going to happen inside of the form, and the form is the area that the element takes place in. So elements could be fire, turn invisible, heal, deal wounds, and forms can be like cone, cube, target. When you combine the two, you make a spell. You could have fire cone and make a cone of fire. You could have fire sphere and make a sphere of fire. Or you could have heal cone and make a cone of healing. You can combine any kind of element with any kind of form to make spells that you need. Now what's interesting about Along the Leyline is just because you took 2 of these together and combined them, it doesn't limit you to combine them in a different way later down the road. If you know fire and ice and cone and cube, well then you can make a fire cone and a fire cube and an ice cone and an ice cube. You can combine any kind of element in any kind of form. So as you learn more elements and forms, you get more types of spells that you can cast. It makes mages very powerful in Along the Leyline. Let's talk about sorcery. So sorcery is even more flexible than the elements and forms combining spell pieces. For sorcery, anything inside of a 1 by 1 meter cube, or if you're using Imperial system, a 1 by 1 yard cube, anything that player can imagine will occur in that form. Now, whenever that player describes what they want to happen, then the referee is going to decide which one of the 4 types of magic fits best. Is it an elemental? Is it support? Is it holy? Is it dark? So let's say the player describes that they want to make this part of the world rain. In this side of the cube, they want to make it rain because they need some water. Well, that's obviously an elemental spell. Or let's say they want to describe trying to heal another character. Well, then that's obviously holy because holy deals with healing. Let's say they want to try to break all the bones of an enemy. Well, that's definitely dark arcana because, well, that's just dark. Well, anytime the sorcerer describes what's going to happen, the referee will then decide which one of those 4 types of magic fits best, and they'll roll their stat for that. This makes sorcerers very, very flexible inside Along the Leyline. But we haven't talked about failing, and I think it's time we talk about spell failure. I mean, nobody likes to fail, but sometimes it happens. And in Along the Leyline, we make it interesting. So whenever somebody fails a spell, then they have to take spell failure. Each spell has a description of what happens whenever they fail the spell. If you're putting pieces together, then spell, element, and form, the spell element will have the failure on it. If you have a complete spell, the complete spell will describe the failure. And if you're using sorcery, well then you lose 1d4 mind. It's always just lose 1d4 mind. Sorcerers are powerful. Whenever you fail a spell, you take spell failure, which usually results in losing mind. But dark arcana is dark and dangerous, and sometimes even more horrible things can happen. It's risky. Be careful. Let's talk about magic items, because spell failure with magic items is a little bit different. Whenever you're using a wand to cast a spell or a spell scroll, and you fail that, you don't lose any mind. It's the item that takes the damage instead. This makes magic items even more powerful because it provides an extra layer of protection for the player character, especially if they have low mind points. Because remember, if you lose your mind, well, you lose your mind. And that's not good. Spell failure usually deals with losing mind, but always check the spell failure on the item or the spell to double check to make sure you're running it correctly. Magic can be tricky, so just watch out for that. Let's talk about losing mind. So once your MP reaches 0, you're going to start rolling mind saves. And remember, anytime you roll a mind save and you get a 1, 2, or a 3, then that die is going to drop. So if you're at a D6, then it's going to drop to a D4. If you're at a D4 and it would drop, then you either go into an endless slumber or you go insane. Your choice as the player. This is really important, referees. The players get to choose whether their characters go to a endless slumber or they go insane. So if they go insane, then the magic and the world around them is so weird to them that they don't understand what's going on anymore. And you as the referee would need to choose what that character would do in that moment. Maybe you could decide in which way they go crazy. Do they crawl in a corner and start digging around to write sigils in the ground? Do they run around screaming? Do they attack their friends? Do they just stare off into the void? There's lots of different things you can do if a character goes crazy in the game world. Think eldritch horror kind of insanity. Or if they go into an endless slumber, they just fall down where they are. Think Snow White. They can't be woken up again. In this video, we've talked about how to use magic. We've described the 4 kinds of magic, well, 5. We've talked about the different ways you can cast spells, complete spells, combining elements and forms, using sorcery, or using magic items. We've talked about what happens if you fail casting your spell. Well, you lose your mind, right? And we've talked about what happens when you lose all your mind and you drop your mind saves. Yeah, keep your mind healthy, guys. One way you can do that is by playing tabletop role-playing games like Along the Leyline. I highly recommend you check it out. You can find it on RPG. If you're a player, you're going to want the player's tome, and if you're a referee, you're going to want the referee's toolkit. If you want extra stuff, there's also adventures or a quick start guide that is free on RPG. You can check the links below. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching this video. Please like, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you guys, and keep gaming.
There are elemental complete spells like tornado, tornado. There are support complete spells like teleportation. There are holy complete spells. There are dark complete spells. There's complete spells for each kind of magic except resonance because it's its own separate thing.